Hi there everyone, and welcome back to the channel. I hope you all found my previous parts of this video useful. An introduction to asbestos, where you will find it, why it was dangerous, and the reasons it was widely used. Today's video is covering the legislation in the UK around the control of asbestos, types of survey, and removal work. The Control of Asbestos Regulations 2012 sets out requirements for the control and management of asbestos in the UK. The approved code of practice and guidance is freely available on the HSE website, and I'll take you through it today. The guidance note is called L143, Managing and Working with Asbestos, and there are 4 parts to this. So part 1 is preliminary. This is about citation and commencement, interpretations and application of the regulations. Part 2 is the general requirements section. This covers the duty to manage asbestos in non-domestic premises, provision and cleaning of protective clothing, prevention and reduction of exposure to asbestos, standards for analysis, health records, and more. Part 3 is about prohibitions and related provisions. This is basically about interpretation of the prohibitions, labelling of products containing asbestos, and additional provisions in the case of exceptions and exemptions. Part 4 is miscellaneous, covering exemption certificates, extension outside of Great Britain, and revocation and savings. Then you have 3 schedules, starting with Schedule 1, which basically outlines the particulars to be included in a notification. Schedule 2, which is about special provisions on the labelling of articles containing asbestos, and Schedule 3, which is amendments. There's a ton of information in that guide and you do need to read through it yourself. Specifically in those regulations, I want to talk about the duty holder's responsibility to manage asbestos on the premises. The duty holder in non-domestic premises usually will be the client, but can be every person who has, by virtue of contract or tenancy, an obligation of any extent in relation to the maintenance or repair of a non-domestic premises, or any means of access or egress to or from those premises. Or B, in relation to any part of non-domestic premises where there is no such contract or tenancy, every person who has, to any extent, control of that part of those non-domestic premises or any means of access or egress to or from those premises. The duty holder in a non-domestic premises must identify the location and condition of any asbestos on the premises, and to manage the risk and to prevent harm to anyone conducting work on the premises. They also have a duty to manage the risk and prevent harm to building users and occupants, and it's important to know there may be a number of duty holders in a non-domestic premises, and in that case it's required that they cooperate with the main duty holder in order to achieve what I've just been talking about. In order to manage the risk, the duty holder must ensure suitable and sufficient assessment is carried out. This is obviously to see whether asbestos is present in the premises. This includes reviewing plans and drawings and inspections of parts of the premises that are reasonably accessible. It's important to know that the duty holder cannot delegate their legal responsibilities to a third party, but they can, and 99% of the time they do, have assistance from third parties for surveys, the asbestos register, and any removal work. The duty holder must ensure the following if they are to do so: that they can demonstrate suitable competence and training, that they can demonstrate independence, impartiality, and integrity, that they have an adequate management system in place, and that they carry out any survey commissioned to locate ACMs in accordance with recommended guidance. Where the duty holder appoints a third party to carry out a survey, they can assess if a surveyor is likely to have adequate experience and training by checking that they are accredited by a recognised accreditation body as complying with BS-EN ISO/IEC 170208 to undertake surveys for ACMs. UCAS is currently the sole accreditation body recognised in the UK, and the HSE strongly recommends using an accredited surveyor. There's a ton of information in that document, and I've just given you a quick overview of a part of Regulation 4. So as I've said, please do go and read it, as we won't be able to cover all of it in detail. Or alternatively, let me know down below if you want an episode covering all of it in detail, and we'll do it. At a very high level, it is essential that the duty holder identifies the location and condition of asbestos and assesses the risk, which will lead to removal and making safe. It's important that this is then continuously managed, and this is done by ensuring roles and responsibilities are understood, proper and accurate information is shared to the relevant people, and training is provided, and ensuring procedures are in place for emergencies or disturbances. In the construction industry, mature clients will most likely have their own robust procedures in place for dealing with asbestos. So as a project manager, it's key to understand the timescales and steps involved in their processes, and obviously the overarching UK legislation. So, what are the types of asbestos survey? There are two types of asbestos survey: management and refurbishment and demolition. If a building is non-domestic and built pre-2000, by law it must have an asbestos survey. It is the duty holder's responsibility under the control of asbestos regulations discussed earlier to have a survey in place if there is not one already in place. So the first one is a management survey, and as the name suggests, is for managing asbestos in a building. It will detail where the asbestos is, its condition, is it deteriorating, stuff like that. This type of survey is lighter touch than the refurbishment and demolition. It only involves visual inspection and minor intrusions, and the surveyor will assess the risk and make assumptions regarding materials that may contain asbestos. There may be some samples taken in a management survey, but it is rare. A refurbishment and demolition survey is required when the client is planning to refurbish or demolish the premises. This is because, as we have covered, asbestos can be present in part of a building structure and the works could disturb it, and this could put employees and workers at risk. This work is intrusive and the surveyor will need the building safely cleared of occupants to take samples. The scope of the work due to be undertaken should inform the scope of the R&D survey. Both of these types of surveys will be recorded in the asbestos register, and a copy of that has to be maintained on site. The asbestos register is a compilation of all asbestos information gathered during the building's history, and as mentioned, all survey information. This leads nicely into the process of dealing with asbestos. There are three types of ways to deal with asbestos. This is licensed, notifiable non-licensed, and non-licensed. All work requires a risk assessment to determine what type of work it is, and each category has its own criteria to decide. As usual, further guidance on this is freely available on the HSE website, but to start off with, let's go through the licensed work. If a certain type of licensable asbestos is found on premises, this will require a licensed asbestos removal contractor to carry out the removal. A list of licensed asbestos contractors is also free on the HSE website. So licensed work is the highest risk level of work with asbestos, and it's reflected by the fact the asbestos removal contractor must be licensed to work with it. Quick side note, it is worth understanding as a project manager that there's a 14-day notification period for any licensed work, and to notify the HSE you fill out an ASB5 form. This is then submitted to the HSE or the enforcing authority, and works cannot commence for 14 days following this notification. Some asbestos containing materials that require licensed work are sprayed coating, asbestos insulation board, and thermal insulation. When assessing whether the work is licensed or not according to the HSE, these are the things you must consider. Where worker exposure to asbestos is not sporadic and of low intensity, or where the risk assessment cannot clearly demonstrate that the control limit will not be exceeded, i.e. 0.1 asbestos fibres per cubic centimetre of air averaged over a 4-hour period, or on asbestos coating, or on asbestos insulation or asbestos insulating board, where the risk assessment demonstrates that the work is not short duration of work, e.g. when work with these materials will take no more than 2 hours in any 7-day period, and no one person works for more than 1 hour in that 2-hour period. Next up is NNLW, notifiable non-licensed work. This work has a few main considerations. What is the type of work you need to do? Maintenance, removal, encapsulation? How degraded is the asbestos? Is it friable? Is it firmly bonded in a matrix? And what condition is the material in? If it's degraded or in poor condition, this suggests that the work would be NNLW. An example of this will be removal of asbestos insulating board for a refurb. Unlike licensed work, there is no minimum notification period to notify the HSE or the enforcing authority. The form that you use for this type of work is called the ASB/NNLW1. The licensed contractor must also hold a medical certificate that is reviewed every 3 years. And I'm just going to flash up a table of the enforcing authorities and when you need to go to which one. Make sure to pause the video if you want to review that for a bit longer. Finally, non-licensed work. Non-licensed work is the lowest risk type of work with asbestos. To understand if work is non-licensed, you must look at the inverse of the list that I showed earlier for licensed work. Non-licensed work would be sporadic and of low intensity. To be considered sporadic and of low intensity, the concentration of asbestos in the air should not exceed 0.6 fibres per cubic centimetre, measured over 10 minutes. It should be carried out in a way that exposure of workers to asbestos will not exceed the legal control limit of 0.1 asbestos fibres per cubic centimetre of air, which is averaged over a 4-hour period, and it must at least meet one of the 4 following conditions. It is a short, non-continuous maintenance task with only non-friable materials, or It is a removal task where the ACMs are in a reasonable condition and not being deliberately broken up, and the asbestos fibres are firmly contained within a matrix. Or it is a task where the ACMs are in good condition and are being sealed or encapsulated. Or it is an air monitoring and control task to check fibre concentrations in the air. Or it's the collection and analysis of asbestos samples to confirm the presence of asbestos in a material. Non-licensed work may be repairing minor damage to an AIB, maintenance work involving asbestos cement products, PVC floors, or cleaning of loose or fine debris containing ACM dust. And that's all for today. Mammoth amount of information to digest here. But as a project manager, it's essential to have an awareness of the rules and regulations, especially when it comes to such a hazardous material such as asbestos. It's important as well to understand that I'm not giving any professional advice in this video, and this is just a compilation of my own knowledge and research. Please undertake your own research and consult the documents that I've cited in this video for use. I really look forward to any feedback you have. Please leave any comments down below, as I'll be sure to be reading all of them. Thanks for watching. Consider giving this video a like if you enjoyed and subscribing if you would like to see more.